Tanya had seen tabloid pictures of the vampire kings, and they really weren't all that attractive, unless you were into the ultra-big, ultra-built, and ridiculously bad, non-human types. She so wasn't. The whole choosing ceremony was outdated to the point of being downright sexist. Yet, every 100 years, all of the eligible women would assemble to be chosen. A queen for each of the kings. The worst part was that vampires and humans never mixed, so there was very little known about them. Their traditions, their ways, their expectations. She shuddered. For at least the 20th time, she wished that her best friend Becky was there with her. The whole thing was a real circus. Tanya hadn't realized how many women there were in Sweetwater between the ages of 21 and 30. Aside from age, there had been a long list of requirements, everything from weight and height to a clean medical exam. Tanya sighed as a group of giggling women squeezed past her, trying to find a spot closer to the podium. Becky was divorced, a complete no-no. It had automatically disqualified her from being allowed to attend the choosing ceremony. Attend? Ha, not hardly. The right term would be forced. If all aspects of the criteria were met, it was mandatory to be here. For whatever reason, the human justice system went along with this whole farce once a century. Only those wanting a fast track to jail failed to show up. What scared her the most, though, was the thought of how many of these women were actually hoping to be chosen today. Vampire Queen? Tanya cringed at the thought. For once, she was thankful for being a little curvy. Most men were into wafer-thin model types, so she would be safe. The whole courtyard vibrated with an excited hum. The two kings were royalty, but they were also vampires. They drank blood, for heaven's sake. Had these women lost their freaking minds? It was early afternoon, yet you wouldn't guess it from the way some of them were dressed. Little back numbers, low-cut tops, sequins, and jewelry were the order of the day. The amount of skin on display was obscene. Tanya did a double-take as one of the ladies walked by. She was wearing a sheer dress without underwear. Her lady bits on display for all and sundry. With all that exposed skin, she hoped that the woman had used sunblock, the highest possible sun protection factor. Tanya looked down at her jeans and t-shirt. Maybe she should have tried a little harder. But then again, she wasn't planning on getting noticed. She had a life to get back to. It wasn't much, but she had her little bookstore. Some might consider it to be boring, but she liked it just fine. She'd owned the book corner for 2 years now. Reading had always been a major passion, that and coffee. It had been her ultimate dream to own a little coffee shop on the side. That way potential customers could browse through purchases while enjoying a cappuccino and maybe a little pastry. So far, she was way behind on those goals. She was supposed to have had half the money she needed already saved in order to do the required renovations. As it stood, though, she may not even have a store soon, let alone an additional coffee shop. She couldn't afford to hire someone to fill in for her today. Just the thought of the closed sign on the door, of losing potential customers, had her looking at her watch. Hopefully this would be over soon. The last thing she needed in her life was a man, let alone a vampire, who would not only uproot her from her goals, but from her friends and family as well. She only had one BFF and her aunt, but she loved them both a ton. It had been a while since she'd dated, and her last relationship had ended badly. Sex was overrated anyway. She could just imagine how much worse it would be with a blood-sucking vamp. Wishing she was back at the store, she glanced at her watch a second time. It wasn't like one of the kings would ever think of choosing a plain Jane like her anyway. What a waste of her precious time. There was silence, followed by gasps, as two of the biggest, meanest-looking men she'd ever seen walked onto the platform. Tanya had expected fanfare, a trumpet call, an announcement at the very least. What she hadn't expected was to be shocked stupid. Pictures she'd seen of the men didn't do them justice. Tall, check. Built, check. Mean, check. Ridiculously hunkalicious, double check. Several women swooned. One woman, closer to the front, fainted. Medics pushed their way through the thick crowd and placed the young women on stretchers. The king on the left was slightly shorter. From tabloid pictures she'd seen, he had to be Zane. Although short was the wrong description. The big vampire must be at least around 6.5 feet. He was meaner looking, with close-cropped hair. From this distance, she could tell that he had dark, hard eyes.